Hello, today I will be refuting the speech that proposed that marijuana has substantial negative effects. The first secondary claim is that marijuana poses a serious health concern, with supporting points that marijuana distorts perception and impairs thinking, that marijuana leads to psychological disorders, and that marijuana can be addictive. The second claim is that marijuana use harms society, supporting points that marijuana influence can affect driving skill, that marijuana trafficking creates violence, and that marijuana smoke causes a health hazard for the public. The proponent stated that marijuana poses a serious health concern because marijuana distorts perception and impairs thinking. While I won't debate about the effects of the substance, I will question the implication that the short-term effects, quoted from the Office of National Drug Control Policy, as impaired skills relating to attention, memory, and learning, are serious health concerns. As he points out in his presentation, these effects were tested 24 hours after the use of the substance. These are short-term effects. A serious health concern would be one whose effects would last far beyond not remembering certain details of the day before. Particularly, a serious health concern would also be one that wouldn't be completely solved by refraining from using the substance for a few hours. The proponent also states that marijuana leads to psychological disorders, such as depression and schizophrenia. On the contrary, a 2008 study showed results that marijuana has benign effects on the brain structure relating to the effects on the development of schizophrenia, meaning the effects were not remarkable enough to make a conclusion. Similarly, a joint experiment was carried out between the University of Southern California and the University of Albany in 2005, which concluded that those who used marijuana had less depressed mood, more positive affect, and fewer somatic complaints than non-users. Positive affect meaning optimistic feelings. Regarding the advocate's claim that marijuana can be addictive, Dr. Stanton Peel, licensed psychologist and practicing psychotherapist working with people suffering from alcoholism and other addictions, states that because the DSM-IV, the classification criteria for mental disorders, describes addiction as a measure of how a substance affects a person's life and not how much a substance creates withdrawal symptoms, marijuana can be easily categorized as an addictive substance, even amongst other substances that actually do create physical withdrawal symptoms, such as those that contain nicotine. The withdrawal symptoms that the advocate outlines are mostly psychological effects as a result of habitual use of a substance, not physical effects such as nausea, convulsions, hypertension, and other symptoms that other addictive substances can portray. The proponent also mentions marijuana being a gateway drug to other harder drugs, which is mostly unrelated to the topic at hand. On to the proponent's second claim that marijuana use harms society. He gives the supporting point that marijuana influence can affect driving skill, giving statistics on the percentage of collision victims who are under the influence of the substance by the Office of National Drug Control Policy. The statistics were that 15% of those who had been driving a car or motorcycle were under the use of marijuana, and 17% had both THC and alcohol in their blood. First of all, the claim is not about how marijuana mixes with other substances like alcohol. Alcohol mixed with just about any other substance, including other types of alcohol, can have detrimental effects on the body, and the advocate makes no claim that marijuana was the integral substance for that 17% of the crashes. Furthermore, the advocate, as well as the source material itself, gives no frame of reference for the 15% of crash victims under the influence of marijuana, which is required for the statistic to mean something in comparison, such as the percentage of crash victims who were not under the influence of anything at all, which was about 55.6% for the automobile users in the study. Now, in that 55.6% of crash victims not under the influence of anything, there are crashes that were the result of unrelated causes, such as sleepiness or distractions from other people in the car. There is no reason why these explanations can't be applied to the percentage of those who tested positive for THC, meaning that marijuana isn't the sole cause for every crash case in that percentage. On the contrary, a 2001 study by the United Kingdom Transit Research Laboratory states that drivers after the use of marijuana showed a more cautious driving style with slower driving speed and greater falling distance behind other cars. Lastly, the study on that the Office of National Drug Control Policy cites is over 20 years old and has a sample pool of only 225 automobiles and 106 motorcyclists in the city of Baltimore, which makes it a fairly big stretch to apply its findings to the United States or even the rest of the world as a whole. The advocate claims that marijuana trafficking creates violence. This is true. However, marijuana trafficking does not directly correlate with the dangers of its use, as the secondary claims that marijuana use harms society. If marijuana were legal in the United States, there would be no real reason for marijuana trafficking. The claim that the trafficking creates violence would still be true, though in other nations, but its application to the broader claim that its use harms society would no longer be valid. Marijuana use and marijuana trafficking, while concerned with the same substance, are the separate issues. The final claim is that marijuana smoke creates a health hazard for the public. Marijuana smoke can be a health hazard to the public, but is not the only way to use marijuana. A technique called vaporization heats a substance so that rather than combusting, the substance boils off into a vapor. Dozens of studies, including ones done by the University of Southern California, the Nova Institute in Germany, the University of Albany, and the Institute of Medicine of the National Academies show that vaporization almost entirely or completely removes the toxic and carcinogenic properties of marijuana, such as tar and carbon monoxide found in more traditional forms of its use. And similarly, ingestion of marijuana also provides no negative health hazards to the public. Therefore, the hazardous health risks are outlined by the advocate are not the fault of the substance, but rather the technique of its use. In summation, the main claim that marijuana has negative effects is not fully supported by all of the evidence and examples given by the advocate. In regards to marijuana posing a serious health concern, the claim that marijuana distorts perception and impairs thinking is marred by the fact that short-term effects are not serious health concerns. Studies have shown that marijuana shows no correlation to the development of schizophrenia and has a positive effect regarding depression. Marijuana can also be easily categorized as an addictive substance regardless of the fact that its withdrawal symptoms are not like that of other drugs that are considered addictive. The gateway theory is also not related to the topic at hand. Regarding the claim that marijuana use harms society, the claim that marijuana influence can affect driving skill is problematic for many reasons. The statistics combining the use of both marijuana and alcohol together are not related to the topic. Crash victims who were tested positive for THC are not all victims of the same substance. Other causes are still plausible. Marijuana has been found to make drivers more cautious, and the statistics provided by the advocate and the Office of National Drug Control Policy are both outdated and hardly representative of a larger sample. In addition, marijuana trafficking is not the fault of the substance, it is the fault of the current policy regarding it. Finally, vaporization and ingestion of marijuana removes the harmful smoke issue of marijuana, and thus the public health hazard issues are problems with the techniques of its use, not the nature of the substance itself. Thank you.
All right, all the structural issues are followed fine. The first point has multiple elements to it, and so it got a little complicated to follow. You're basically trying to diminish the significance of the question of whether or not it's serious, and I thought you had some good criteria on that and those explanations. You dismissed the gateway issue on this next point, and that's okay, although I'm not sure that the advocate would see that as being not related to whether or not it's a serious problem. The social harms that you're talking about, I like the way that you tried to explain how the marijuana use by people involved in accidents, the accidents may not in fact be a result of the marijuana use. I think you stretch credibility a little bit there. I like the argument better that the study that was done back in Baltimore is problematic to use because of its age and because of the limited scope of the research, and you know that's in fact what the NHTSA is basing its inference on. You know, the vapor argument on the third point largely assumes, for instance, that that's the primary method of delivery. I think that that's a little bit problematic. I thought that you had a good summary, but it goes on too long. It needs to be condensed a little bit. I know you're trying to recap all the main issues, but with so much detail, it just sounds like you kind of hit the replay button and just speeded it up a little bit. I think you need to kind of get to the essentials on each of those points and just remind us what that was there. All right, thank you.